Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima was bustling with activity that day. A Boeing 737-200 was preparing for what seemed to be a routine domestic flight. It was TANS Peru Flight 204, bound for Pucallpa. On board were 98 people, 91 passengers and 7 crew members. At first, the sky looked calm, almost an ally for the journey. But a powerful Amazonian storm lay in wait for the final leg. What seemed like an ordinary trip within the country was about to turn into a race against time to land safely. It was August 23, 2005, just a few minutes past 2 p.m. in Lima. TANS Peru, Flight 204 was waiting to begin taxiing towards the assigned runway for takeoff. This flight connected 3 major cities in Peru's eastern region, Lima, Pucallpa, and Iquitos. The route covered around 1,000 kilometers, crossing the Andes Mountains and descending into the Amazon rainforest. The flight plan estimated 1 hour from Lima to Pucallpa, followed by a short stop to let passengers off and take new ones on board. Then it would continue on to Iquitos. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-200, registration OB1809P, built in 1982. It had previously flown for South African Airways and other airlines until TANS Peru purchased it in 2003. The aircraft was powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney JT8D-17A engines and had no mechanical issues, although its design was somewhat dated and lacked certain modern technologies, such as advanced systems to warn of dangerous wind shear. TANS Peru, whose full name was Transportes Aéreos Nacionales de la Selva, was a state-owned airline that had been operating since 1963. It was created as part of the Peruvian Air Force, with the goal of connecting the most remote areas of the country, particularly in the Amazon, where there are no roads. In 1999, it became a public company with private investment, although it remained linked to the state. By the mid-2000s, the airline was facing difficulties. Its fleet was old, resources were limited, and it faced competition from new private carriers such as Aerolíneas del Perú, Peru. Despite this, TANS remained popular for its low fares and for flying to destinations that other airlines did not serve. In 2003, the airline suffered a major blow. Flight 22, a Fokker F-28, crashed near Chachapoyas. All 46 passengers and crew on board died in that accident. Returning to Flight 204, the captain was Commander Octavio Pérez Palma Garreta, 45 years old. He had a total of 5,867 flight hours, 3,763 of which were on Boeing 737 aircraft. Beside him was First Officer Jorge Luis Pinto Panta, 37 years old with 4,755 flight hours, but only 119 of those on that type of aircraft. Also in the cockpit was 38-year-old Gonzalo Chirinos Delgado, a pilot in training. He was taking part in an operational training program. He had 2,700 flight hours, although only 61 of them were on the Boeing 737. His role was that of an observer or trainee, and he was not supposed to take direct control of the aircraft. At 14:24, Flight 204 began taxiing along runway 15 at Jorge Chávez Airport. The takeoff was uneventful, and the aircraft started its short journey to Pucallpa. Just a few minutes after departure, the pilots received weather reports indicating the formation of a severe storm in the approach area to Pucallpa. Although the conditions were unfavorable, the pilots chose not to alter their plans and continued towards the airport, intending to assess the situation when they were closer to the storm. Later, as they began their descent at 15:03 and 10 miles from runway 02, they were cleared for a visual approach. However, the controller warned them about the ongoing storm. While descending to 2,500 feet above the ground, the aircraft began to be pelted with hail, and strong crosswinds buffeted the plane, causing concern among everyone on board. Despite this, the captain decided to press on, confident they could maintain control and land. During the descent, the aircraft was shaken by severe turbulence, and a heavy hailstorm struck the windscreen, drastically reducing the pilot's visibility. At that moment, the first officer decided to leave the cockpit and sit in the passenger section, giving his seat to the pilot in training, who unexpectedly had to assist the captain during this critical phase. The co-pilot's seat was then taken by Edgar Rojas Orellana, the airline's mechanic. At 15:05, Flight 204 was only 5 miles from runway 02, facing 30-knot crosswinds and almost zero visibility. They couldn't see anything and were beginning to fear that landing would be impossible. But with almost no time to communicate, the wind forced them down towards the ground. Seconds before impact, the cockpit voice recorder captured this exchange. Find the runway, third. I'm looking for it. We're at 10 kilometers, flap 5. Okay, flap 5. Do you have the runway in sight? No, I don't have it. Ask the tower what visibility is like on the other side so we can turn around and land there. Pucallpa Tower, TANS Peru 204. What's the visibility on the other side of the runway? I can't see anything. Look with me. Help me raise the nose. Keep lifting. At 15:06, the TANS Peru Boeing 737 struck a swamp located about 6.5 kilometers southwest of the airport. The fuselage broke into 3 sections upon hitting the muddy ground, and a fire immediately erupted, fueled by the spilled fuel. Of the 98 people on board, 40 lost their lives, 35 passengers and 5 crew members, mainly in the forward section, where the fire was most intense. The 58 survivors, many with severe burns and fractures, faced a nightmare of smoke and flames. Some managed to escape through gaps in the fuselage, while the jungle, soaked by the rain, muffled the sound of their screams. The tragedy of Flight 204 was only just beginning. The crash site, a swamp surrounded by dense jungle, was a difficult and dangerous area for any rescue operation. At 15:10, just minutes after the impact, locals from nearby communities, alerted by the deafening noise, ran towards the scene. They faced muddy terrain and thick smoke from the fire. When they arrived, they found a devastating sight: the shattered, burning aircraft, with injured survivors calling for help, some trapped among the wreckage. These improvised rescuers managed to pull several passengers to safety, including children and elderly people, before the flames reached them. At 15:30, airport emergency teams and firefighters arrived, but the conditions made access extremely challenging. The 58 survivors were taken to Pucallpa's regional hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to treat severe burns and fractures. Some of the most critically injured were flown to Lima for specialized care. Tragically, the crash site was looted by some individuals who came not to help, but to steal belongings from victims and parts of the aircraft. One of the black boxes was even taken, but was later recovered thanks to a reward offered by the authorities. Despite everything, the heroism of the rescuers saved many lives that afternoon. So what really happened? Why did the aircraft crash so close to the airport? The Air Accident Investigation Commission of Peru's Ministry of Transport and Communications carried out a thorough investigation into the crash of TANS Peru Flight 204, which occurred on 23 August 2005 in Pucallpa. The report concluded that the main cause was a wrong decision by the flight crew to proceed with the approach and landing at Pucallpa Airport, despite the extremely adverse weather conditions. The aircraft deliberately entered a storm that had been clearly detected on the onboard weather radar from approximately 190 miles before reaching its destination. The crew began an unstabilized descent, with descent rates exceeding 15 feet per second, which triggered the Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS alarm. In addition, upon entering the core of the storm with intense hail, the pilots completely lost both horizontal and vertical visibility, rendering them unable to maintain situational awareness until the aircraft struck trees and then the ground. Among the contributing factors to the accident, the report highlighted incomplete crew. The designated first officer, Jorge Luis Pinto Panta, was not in the cockpit at the time of the accident, as he was seated in the passenger section. This directly affected cockpit resource management. Non-compliance with the NOTAM issued on 31st July 2005. Total absence of standard operating procedures in the airline at the time of the accident, which greatly hindered safe flight management. Poor crew resource management skills, reflecting inadequate risk management and a lack of awareness of potential hazards. Limited capability of the air traffic controller in Pucallpa to identify the severity and danger of the weather situation, made worse by regulations preventing them from taking effective, preventive decisions. Significant shortcomings in pre-flight and in-flight planning, inadequate checklist execution due to distractions caused by the adverse weather conditions. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss the next reconstruction. Which flight would you like us to analyze in the next episodes? Leave it in the comments.